For this video, I'm not going to talk as much. I'm just going to continue working on the depth portion using my red, orange, and my violet. Continuing to just give you some examples that you can see. Remember to turn the page as you need to. And then I'll also have other videos showing examples with different colors, showing how to do some of the embellishment portions, how to add patterns to the fronts of the letters, that kind of thing. So that any step of the process that you are working on, you'll be able to have some sort of a video guidance to help you out. So like I was mentioning before, anytime your depth is a bit thicker, you'll see more of that value transition. It's also a little bit easier, but you want to be careful still to make sure that it's a smooth transition. So then I can actually have a gradient here as well to help separate these two sections even more. Since one at the bottom of the O and one at the bottom of the H, I would want them to stand out a little more from each other. And again, that's a choice that you can make. You don't necessarily have to do that. That's just the way that I tend to work. So again, just adding another layer to deepen my value here and to make this portion be kind of more of a cool red. But still red, which is why I'm adding some more red on top of the purple. I could easily transition from red and gradually get cooler and cooler until by this point I'm outlining and using my depth with the blue. It's completely up to you. Once again, there is nothing wrong with having fun and experimenting with your transitions from one color to the next and from one value to the next. That's exactly what this part of the project is about. Because by now you've learned how to do the shading, you've learned how to overlap colors, so now I want you to just have fun with it. So now this part of the M, we're not going to really see the back of that depth. So it's going to be treated very similarly to the inner spot of the O and the E that we did earlier, where it's just going to sort of be a transition from dark to light, moving down that space. But it is also a corner here, so it will still be pretty dark. So this might actually end up as an example of how one area can appear completely almost dark. There is still a little transition in value there, but not nearly as much as there is on some of the other depth spaces. So smooth transitions from dark to light. Turn the page whichever direction makes it easier for you to do that. If that means that you're working upside down, then you're working upside down, and that's fine. Each person is going to have slightly different techniques for this point, and that's fine. Definitely feel free to experiment and explore and see what works best for you in terms of the way that you use color, the way that you turn the page, the combinations of color. Just make sure that you focus on making those transitions from one color to the next and from one value to the next nice and smooth, since that's what this part of the project is all about. And once again, this is going to be a pretty dark spot up at the top, and then gradually get lighter and then move down, because it's sort of like going up into that crevice of the M here. And then I'm going to go back over with the red to make sure once again that the red appears on top, because I don't want it to be too purple, since I'm not doing the transition from red to purple into blue or green or whatever would come next. But that is still, remember, a perfectly valid option. So as you see, some sections take more layers than others, and that's fine. Do not feel like just because you did only 1 or 2 layers on one part, that it should be only 1 or 2 layers on the whole thing. That's actually not usually the case. You want to make sure that you treat each transition from dark to light as its own thing. Don't rely so heavily upon what you did previously that you get kind of stuck in a rut of repeating that over and over, because that's not always going to be your answer. I'm sure you guys have heard similar things in other classes, to where each problem or each solution or each scientific question has a slightly different answer. Same thing here. Each section that you are shading might have a slightly different process. You want to make sure that you pay attention to each one and treat it individually. So again, this part of my M here, the sort of end of it, is going to have value scales going down from each corner, getting lighter, but then also from the outer edge of that letter. The key there is to make sure that you have nice smooth transitions from all directions, so that they kind of all just merge together. And then I'm going to actually use my purple, because I tend to prefer that shading for corners, because it just enhances the depth more. So now you can see how the 3 different value scales that I basically did are coming together to create all of the depth in this section. And it just takes a couple layers of overlapping each one and going over the whole space to really make it all cohesive. Takes a little patience, a little practice, but it's well worth it. Remember, you can also use a white in any of those lighter areas. Like if you wanted to then go back into each letter with some of the white colored pencil, going from the lightest edge towards the rest of the color, you can. You don't necessarily have to, but for some people that definitely does help make it a little bit easier. Plus, it's almost a mindset thing to where people just prefer to be able to have some sort of pencil in each section. And that's a good way to be able to keep your light areas light, but still have pencil in there if that puts your mind at ease. And I'll show you that in just a minute once I finish up this section. So as you can see, this is a pretty big section. So you've got a pretty decent graduated value scale in there, going from the section here, going across, and coming down from that whole portion of the E. So that's a pretty big, easy space to be able to do an entire value scale without quite so quick of a transition. Makes it a little easier on you. So again, not every single section is going to take the same amount of time, and that's totally fine. Do not rush. Do not feel like they should all take the same amount of time. They really should not. So now let me grab a white and just show you briefly how that would go from the lighter area towards the darker ones. So it's very much the exact same concept as the rest of the shading we've done, except now you're going to press down hardest, furthest away into that white area, and then press down less and less as you move into the color. And it's not a super visible difference, but you will start to see some of the color soften itself a little bit in that transition. And not to mention the white will help you, once again, just kind of put your mind at ease if you are one of those people who prefers to have pretty hard coloring in the entire section. You can use the white colored pencil to help you achieve that, but still keep that transition in there. So I'm just going to quickly go over a couple of these spaces. Once again, you're not going to get white by doing this, but you can see that it is smoothing some of these value transitions out even more, especially in those lighter and mid-tone areas. So it can definitely be something that is beneficial if that helps you. Once again, the white is not necessary, but it definitely cannot hurt. And it does not add a whole bunch of time, honestly, because you're not worried so much about the transition that the white is going to make, because it's not very visible. You're more concerned just about smoothing out what you've already got. So it's very similar to a tortillon in terms of regular shading, in that the value transitions, the color transitions, all of that is made by the colored pencils, but then the white simply makes it all a little bit smoother. So I will continue, obviously, posting a couple of other videos just of different examples, so that basically any way that you pick to finish your word, there will be some type of a visual recorded demonstration that might be able to help you with that. So once again, you can see sort of how the white just kind of smooths it all out just a little bit more. But you don't want to make sure that, or you do want to make sure that you don't put white where your dark values are.